In West Bank, an Israeli strike killed 3 Palestinians. The Israeli military said that the strike was against Palestinian militants. IDF claims among the 4 dead, 2 were senior Islamic Jihad members. Since the Gaza war broke out in October, Israel has stepped up military raids in the West Bank. According to the United Nations, at least 358 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces since October 7th. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told U.S. Republican senators on Wednesday that Israel will continue its efforts to defeat Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Senator Jim Resich said, and I'm quoting here, he's going to do what he said he's going to do. He's going to finish it. The Israeli leader spoke to Republicans through a video link nearly a week after Chuck Schumer's speech. The Senate's Democratic Majority Leader recently branded Netanyahu an obstacle to peace and urged new elections in Israel. Schumer clarified rebuke of the Israeli Prime Minister as Netanyahu conducts video calls with Senate Republicans. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Saudi Crown Prince as efforts continue to secure a ceasefire in the Gaza war. The U.S. Secretary of State began his 6th West Asia tour since the onset of Gaza war. Reports claim that Blinken will also meet the Emirati International Cooperation Minister and the General Secretary of the Palestinian Liberation Organization's Executive Committee. Blinken said that he would pursue talks on arrangements for governance, security, and also of a post-conflict Gaza. The EU is close to a decision to use interest on Russia's central bank's frozen foreign exchange reserves to support Ukraine. The decision to freeze Russian assets is seen as a part of a broader sanctions aimed at deterring Russian aggression in the first place. EU's foreign policy chief Josep Borrell says the bloc plans to use at least 90% of these revenues from Russian assets frozen in Europe. He adds that these will then be used to buy arms for Ukraine through the European Peace Facility Fund, and the remaining 10% would be put into the EU budget to help strengthen Ukraine's defense industry. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has promised that US's support to Ukraine will continue. Sullivan made these comments during a trip to Kiev. The crucial U.S. aid for Ukraine has been stuck in Congress since late last year, piling more pressure on already outgunned Ukrainian troops. Sullivan said that the aid will reach Ukraine. As he says, there is no plan B. Meanwhile, Russia has intensified its attack on Ukraine. A Russian missile hit an industrial area in Ukraine's northern city of Kharkiv, killing at least 5 people and injuring 8. According to local authorities, the strike caused a major fire in a printing house. Rescuers worked at the site. They carried out the search operation to look for survivors, while also fight the flames. Ukraine's Kharkiv region, which borders Russia to the north and lies close to the front line, has suffered regular attacks during Russia's 2-year-old invasion. The violence in Haiti continues. Now, the armed gangs have launched new attacks in the suburbs of Port-au-Prince as they target peaceful communities near the Haitian capital. According to reports, at least 5 people died in and around the suburbs. The gangs have blocked some entrances. This prompted the people in the communities to call radio stations pleading for help from Haiti's National Police Force. The latest attack comes after gangs went on a rampage in the wealthy neighborhoods of Petonville, where over 10 people were killed. A report by news agency Reuters claimed that at least 2 suspected gang members were killed during an attack on the neighborhood, which includes a leader known as Makandal. The violence in Haiti have killed scores of people, with some 17,000 people left homeless amid the violence. And amid the violence, the U.S. Department of State announced that it has completed its first evacuation of Americans, while adding that 30 Americans will be able to leave Port-au-Prince daily due to the ongoing violence. The U.S. government has organized helicopter flights. Florida congressman also helped to evacuate Americans from an unknown location in Haiti. Mills shared the footage on his X account that said 13 Americans have been evacuated. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, he criticized a Texas deportation law. The law empowers state law enforcement authorities to arrest people suspected of illegally crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. Obrador said Mexico will not accept anyone repatriated by Texas. The law, known as SB 4, would make it a state crime to illegally enter or re-enter Texas from a foreign country. Prison sentences run up to 20 years for those who refuse to comply. A U.S. appeals court panel seemed split over the Texas law that would empower state authorities to arrest and prosecute migrants and asylum seekers who are suspected of illegally crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. The hearing before a panel of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans is the latest in a whipsaw of judicial decisions about the contentious law. It also comes a day after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled the law could go into effect. But just hours later, the 3-judge appeals panel scheduled an emergency hearing and reversed its own earlier ruling, resulting in the state law again being blocked from taking effect. A House of Representatives committee is planning to invite U.S. President Joe Biden to testify in an impeachment probe. The probe was brought by House Republicans, and this is the first time that the panel has suggested of calling Biden. The 8-hour-long hearing revolved around Biden family's business dealings. Democratic lawmakers, they've dismissed the inquiry as baseless. Republicans in the House of Representatives allege that Biden and members of his family improperly profited from policy decisions in which he took part while being President Barack Obama's vice president from 2009 to 2017. Portugal's president has named Luis Montenegro, the head of the centre-right Democratic Alliance, as the country's new prime minister, and invited him to form a minority government. Well, he won a parliamentary election on March 10th by a slim margin. Montenegro says his party is prepared to govern on its own and will not negotiate a broad formal agreement with the far-right party. According to him, the government will be sworn in on April 2nd. Indonesia's election commission formally announced that Prabowo Subianto has received the most votes in last month's presidential election. The former Special Forces commander won the competition with nearly 60% of votes. Prabowo is expected to take over from outgoing President Joko Widodo in October. He was attacked for his alleged old links to human rights violations. Next week, European Union is likely to adopt measures that will curb election risks on X, TikTok, Facebook. In February, the EU executive announced the draft guidelines. It is a part of the Digital Services Act, which requires big tech firms to do more to tackle illegal and harmful content on their platforms. In recent times, these platforms have announced various measures to counter disinformation, AI abuse, and covert influence. The US government is warning state governors that foreign hackers are carrying out devastating cyber attacks on water and wastewater system across the country. In a letter released on Tuesday, National Security Advisor and Environmental Protection Agency Administrator, he warned the state governments and water facilities must improve their defenses against the threat. The U.S. water sector, which spans 150,000 public water systems, has often struggled to find the cash and personnel to deal with hacking threats. At least 5 people were killed in a house fire in Pennsylvania. The station reports that 4 of the dead are children. According to Westmoreland County, dispatchers, firefighters responded to the home around midnight. However, the cause of the fire remains under probe. A 2-story building collapsed in New Delhi's Kabir Nagar area. At least 2 people have died in the accident and 1 person is injured. As per officials, they received a distress call at 2 a.m. local time. Reports claim when the building collapsed, the first floor of the building was vacant and the ground floor was being used for jeans cutting. Police officials say that the fort, it is currently underway to locate the owner of the building, as they promise to take strict legal action.
ये मकान गिरा कुछ जो आगे के हिस्से में थे उन्हें बचा लिया वो एकदम आगे
The Peruvian Ministry of Culture received 4,600 items of cultural property repatriated from the Americas and Europe. According to said Peruvian Minister of Culture, this brings the total to 5,445 cultural objects repatriated in the last 2 years. The objects repatriated from Germany, US, Italy, Netherlands, Portugal and Switzerland. They were handed over by Foreign Minister Javier Gonzalez. The items recovered include feathered garments, textiles and antique ceramics. Due to climate change and increased maritime traffic, the parrotfish, along with around 50 new species, has spread into the Adriatic Sea. They are threatening native fish population and local livelihoods. New fish species arrived in the Mediterranean and the Adriatic from the Red Sea through the Suez Canal due to warmer waters or carried in tanks. It is endangering the survival of around 460 native fish species. Jonathan, a giant tortoise, will celebrate his 190th birthday this year at his home on the South Atlantic island of St. Helena, a volcanic British overseas territory. According to the Guinness World Records, the event will make the reptile the oldest ever living reptile in order that includes turtles, terrapins and tortoises. Tourists come from far and wide to photograph the reptile roaming the yard of Plantation House. China's deputy governor of the central bank affirmed ample monetary policy flexibility, hinting at potential further cuts to bank's reserve requirement ratio. following a substantial reduction in the month of January. Experts anticipate additional easing measures this year. The economy, starting in 2024, faces ongoing challenges in the property sector. Chinese Premier Li Qiang announced a growth target of around 5%, aiming to overhaul the growth model and tackle property sector risks. Japan's exports marked a third consecutive month of growth in February, surging by 7.8% compared to the same period last year. This exceeded economists' expectations of a 5.3% increase, fueled by heightened demand from the US, China and European Union. The positive export figures come amid the Bank of Japan's recent policy shift ending years of easing measures. However, the central bank is expected to maintain near-zero rates to support the economic recovery. A Reuters poll further indicates that confidence among large Japanese firms has rebounded to a 3-month high, while the service sector mood has reached a 7-month peak in the month of March. Asian markets are poised for early gains after the Federal Reserve's indication of a potential rate cut this year, strengthening investor sentiment. Despite recent fluctuations, global stocks remain near record levels with low fluctuation. Well, key economic data from New Zealand, Australia and Japan, along with PMI reports from Japan, Australia and India, will shape trading sentiment. The yen's slide continues following the Bank of Japan's historic rate hike, with the currency hitting multi-year lows against major currencies. Traders anticipate a June rate cut by the Fed and further BOJ hikes in September and December. New Zealand's GDP data is awaited to potentially impact the Kiwi dollar, while PMI reports for March will offer insights into regional economic activity. Australian Open champion Aryna Sabalenka says her heart is broken after the death of her former boyfriend. Well, the Belarusian was speaking for the first time since the apparent suicide of her former boyfriend, who is also a former NHL player. Sabalenka said that while she was no longer dating Koltsov, his death is an unthinkable tragedy. Police said that Koltsov jumped off a balcony but did not suspect any foul play. The news of his passing away sent a shockwave through the Miami Open, where Sabalenka is scheduled to play her best friend Paula Badosa on Friday.